Hello everybody, welcome to this live episode of Media Voices. Before we begin, just a little disclaimer. We recorded this live in the White Swan pub in Aldgate. Now that's a working pub and we were in a tiny room upstairs, which meant that we were directly above the door that leads in and out. So I've done my very best to cancel that wherever possible. I've mitigated it and I've cut it out wherever I possibly could, but it will still be in the background every now and then, so please do bear with us. Ladies, gentlemen, everybody, we are the Publisher Podcast from Media Voices, and this is our first live episode since 2019 somehow. Thank you very much. I'm Chris Sutcliffe.
I'm Esther Thorpe.
And I'm Peter Houston.
And we usually since our revamp, we take a look at the people and products powering publishing, which is why I have a pop guard there. And this time, though, we are recording effectively our thoughts on the previous year, and I look forward to next year. Hopefully, we'll get some audience participation as well, because we want to make this as broad a viewpoint as possible. But we are recording this live from the White Swan in Aldgate in London. So we're going to begin with a quick look at one of our favourite stories, or the most relevant stories from 2024. Before then, I just wanted to ask the two of you, we've been doing Media Moments for years at this point. How did we feel about this year from a media perspective, either in terms of success stories or lack thereof, or how do we feel about progress being made on things that we've written about before, like trust or, platform strategy, audience development strategy, anything like that?
It was a weird one because it felt like so much that had been talked about for so long didn't actually come to fruition. And I know Esther's going to talk about one of the big stories, but the whole cookie thing was just a nightmare.
Don't steal my cookies.
No, I'm not. Is there anyone in from Reach? Oh, thank Christ. So Reach is doing this weird, we're paying loads of people off, and ended up being 400 people, but now we're employing another 60 people in content, and it's just like, I don't know, it's a weird year from that point of view. Well, it was just like nothing actual.
We're less than 5 minutes in and we've already dumped on Reach.
It wouldn't be Media Voices if that weren't the case.
I'm not dumping on them. I think the fact that they went out and they said, we're going to employ 60 content people, it's actually a great thing. I just think that I feel like... Okay, I'm dumping on it. I feel like, what's the actual strategy? I don't know.
Yeah. It is one of those years where, we've just come from News Rewired, publishing conference in London. Excellent conference, very well done. And there was an awful lot there that I think spoke to uncertainty about things. This was not just kind of a transitional year, but it was one that kind of flew in the face of what a lot of people expected.
Okay, but here's my problem with the word transition.
Go on.
When you transition, right? You start here, you end up here. Where's here?
For the audio audience's benefit, Peter stretches his arms out very wide as though displaying a fish.
And he doesn't know where the right hand is actually pointing.
What we can actually, that leads neatly on to my story from 2024, because that came up in News Rewired as well. And it was this ongoing story about trust in media. Now, we have written about this for years in our Media Moments report. It has historically actually been very difficult to write about because the numbers have stayed relatively static. For years, we've had a lot of talk about local news being much more trusted than kind of the lamestream media of nationals.
Are we distinguishing between the US and the UK here? Because in the US, it's just gone down.
Well, I was going to mention that. So there was a poll from Gallup, and they said that basically now 32% of the American public actively distrust mainstream media, and that's legacy media, that's newspapers, that's broadcast channels, that's radio, which is an outlier really. But then only 31% of people actively trust them. So there is this almost perfect one-third split between people who are ambivalent, people who trust the media, people who distrust the media. And I was trying to think about why that would be for this year. And obviously we've had the US. What have you seen?
Why would that be for this year?
Well, yes. because we've had the US election, which has acted as a flashpoint for a lot of this. And at News Rewired, we heard about, sorry, Marcelo, I keep gesturing at you. We heard there all about how the legacy media outlets almost didn't move the needle as they once did on the US election. But, political opinion was not influenced one way or the other. And a big part of an audience has moved away from what we think of as legacy media. I think it's a pejorative term, but, and they've gone to that kind of individual influencer level of news, which is not moderated. It's not filtered particularly. And I think that comes from the fact that, particularly on the right, people on the right felt disenfranchised for a long time, but it's effective. They have had this huge resurgence in people getting their news from individuals.
Can I counter this a bit?
Yes.
Finish?
No, absolutely.
Okay. So I think from the stats we've seen from the US, I'm aware the UK is different, but I think they're a bit of a canary in the mine for what's happening. It's not that trust in the media is at 36%. That is really heavily split between the right wing and the left wing. And the left wing generally trust is, I think, 40, 50% in media. Amongst Republicans, it's 12%. It's really, really low. And I think what we've seen happening is there is still trust in legacy media news organizations. Look at what happened with the Washington Post when they said, actually, we're taking a step back. We're not going to endorse whether that was the right or the wrong decision. What was it? 200,000 subscribers they lost in 24 hours?
Yeah.
And that, I think, is a signal that people do trust legacy media, and they trust legacy media to be telling the truth about what's going on.
We're talking about 45%. I know that's not historically that's not.
But The Guardian
ridiculous.
then had this huge influx of donations and subscribers. I think there is a willingness to go to trusted news organisations, but it is very, very split depending on where your political view is.
Well, I mean, we could talk about the US and the UK.
We've not even mentioned The Onion yet, and I really want to get to The Onion.
So, Alex Jones. Yes. Taking us right. Infowars. Bankruptcy up for auction. The Onion put in a winning bid, announced they had won the bid yet. And then now I think a judge in Texas is basically deliberating on whether that was a valid bid.
Have you seen the thing today?
Once he stops laughing.
X has said that they can't transfer the handle because for some...
And it reminded me of Cards Against Humanity, which is not just the card game. It is a really forward-facing and kind of liberal-leaning corporate holding company, which owns a ton of stuff, but which sued Elon Musk and SpaceX for dumping a shitload of their SpaceX debris on their property, effectively, which they bought up alongside the kind of the wall in the US. Between the US
is this a real?
Yeah, it's a real story. Yeah, absolutely. Which it made me angry, and that's where I'm going to go with this. It made me angry that these purveyors of jokes, effectively The Onion and Cards Against Humanity, are doing better at holding the powerful to account than a lot of legacy media. And if that offends people here, fine. If that assertion makes you angry, then good. You should be angry. We heard how little impact legacy media actually had on the US election, and I think it comes down to this, which has been my takeaway from Trust for the year. Legacy media in the US and the UK they are the incumbents, and they are not doing enough to talk to people who are disenfranchised. They are not doing enough to talk to people who are outside of the kind of purview of their newsroom, because they are not diverse enough in their newsrooms, and they do not know who the fuck they are talking to. And I think that a lot of that mistrust comes down to almost passivity of this dogma of both sidesism. So I think going into this is leaping ahead to predictions, but I think going into 2025, I really hope we're going to see this rise of politically polemic, totemic, transparent news organizations. We're going to scoop up a lot of those disenfranchised readers, and we're going to see a bunch of new punk zines, and we're going to see a bunch of people who are angry and looking to channel that anger in a positive way through these new titles. Now, I really fucking hope that is the case. I think there's a lot of things that we need to talk about. Phil's shaking his head. We were talking to Matt Kelly a couple of years ago about the New European being waved as a flag for people who were pro-Europe.
I think the problem with what you said, which I don't necessarily disagree with, but the problem is a scale issue. And if you don't have the scale, if stick to the UK, if no one trusts the BBC and the only Guardian readers trust the Guardian, and only Telegraph readers trust the Telegraph, then that polarisation is just going to keep going. I mean, luckily we don't have people like Joe Rogan as far as I'm aware.
It's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time. They could be in this room.
But I think the most important thing you said, and it's about those voices, and what you're saying is these people don't think their voices are being heard, whether that's on the right or the left, and that's where media's got to actually start doing something. That's why zines do well, because they're right inside the community. That's why something like Tickaroo does well, because they're bringing those voices out. So when Trump first got in, and Rage Against the Machine was obviously very anti-Trump, and all the alt-right boys kicked off, the best comment I ever saw was, what fucking machine did you think they were raging against? The washing machine. Sorry, that was a little segue.
I think we could just finish there. That's good.
Well, actually, yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Esther, something you are going to bring up now was also brought up at Newsweek Wired, and I think that is in part because of the fact that it didn't wrong foot a lot of people. It was almost like the culmination of what everyone expected for a long time.
I've got 3 stories in one here, and I'm slightly conscious of the time. So mine is literally titled Google WTF, because Google has I think it's just had an atrocious year, and a year that I think probably if we looked back 2 years ago, we would never have foreseen coming. So in July, they abandoned the plan that they'd announced 4 years ago and delayed. They said they weren't going to block third-party cookies from Chrome after all, despite the fact I think that was supposed to happen in summer, and then they're like, oh no, it's not happening.
When I think about the man hours I wasted writing about the deprecation of cookies.
Think of all the money you made writing about that.
What fucking money writing about the deprecation of cookies, Peter?
And I think although that has, a lot of the industry has been pushed to rely less on third-party cookies, which is great. Those that are kind of the bottom feeders will continue to bottom feed. Google has then had this whole break-up and regulatory challenge, and I'm aware we're recording just days after the Department of Justice have said that they are going to propose that Google actually divests Chrome. And it kind of just feels like we're getting to that point where actually Google could be legitimately broken up in the next few years if they don't fight it, which obviously will. And regardless of all that, AI is coming for everything anyway. We have got 20 minutes into the recording before we've mentioned AI.
Yay!
Oh, sorry. Just a point of... Love that, Cloud, by the way. But Charlotte said she was going to punch anybody who mentioned AI on the podcast.
I'll take it. And I think we've seen a year where Google, as the dominant search engine, has actually struggled to control a lot of the AI slop that's come out. Its AI overview rollout was completely botched. There are things like you could search for whether glue was a great topping on pizza.
As if you want to do a YouTube video of you cooking a pizza.
But assuming all of that,
cheese look cheesy,
and assuming all of that gets better, which it inevitably will do. I think this is a future that when ChatGPT came out in late 2022, a lot of people could see it on the horizon, and it feels like it's arrived this year, and it's not comfortable. I did see an estimate yesterday that the AI overviews are affecting publisher traffic by 5 to 10%. I think it's going to be way more than that, and if not now, definitely in 6 to 12 months, that's going to be impacting publishers more than 5 to 12%.
Was there not a prediction that it was going to be something close to 60, 70%?
I think that was Brian Morrissey that said that people panicking it'd be close to 60,
right.
But then look at what they did on the night of the US election when they put the election tracker map up the top. But that must have had an impact on publisher traffic, and I think we're just a bit too close to have really seen what impact that was. I know people have said their audience is switched off. Well, I think if Google's taking all of that and not sending that anywhere, they know what that's going to do to the ecosystem, and it feels like we're just careering towards a massive iceberg that we all know is coming, and we just can't stop.
Barry Adams here. And no, I don't think we're careening to an iceberg. I think this is a gradual evolution of Google's enshittification. And it's another brick in the wall. AI overviews are not going to steal all your traffic, they're going to steal some of your traffic. Just like feature snippets stole some traffic before, just like the map pack stole some of the traffic before to other aggregators. This is just another one of those evolutions. Google's only remit is to stay the dominant search engine. That's all they really care about. And they will do whatever they need to stay the dominant search engine. The moment ChatGPT search becomes a real threat, Google will adjust and will shift. And they're probably the only company who can, because of their scale and operation. They're afraid of some existential threats, like AI-generative search engines, but they are the ones who can probably win that battle. I'm not worried about Google search yet, and also I don't think Chrome being divested from Google will make any meaningful difference whatsoever.
But I'd always thought Chrome might well be too big to fail. And I found it increasingly over the last few months quite a dissatisfying search experience. And I can't be the only one who's looking, maybe thinking maybe Firefox, maybe Bing might actually be a decent alternative.
Well, let's not go fucking mental.
I haven't yet. I might go back to Chrome quite quickly.
I challenge anybody here to go and use Bing or Search GPT for the next couple of weeks. And I will promise you will go back to Google screaming. Screaming.
Ask Jeeves.
Lycor. On the Chrome thing, I mean, if Google was to write the script of Google being broken up, Google would say, "Oh, let's give people Chrome." That's not where their money is.
Who whispered exactly loud enough for it to be? It got picked up on that mic.
But I think if I was to summarise all of that, the takeaway for me, the biggest story of the year, is that the power Google has held for almost 20 years does seem to be actually visibly eroding, and I think that will have good and bad implications for all of us. And I would love to do a little bit of a hands up. We can feed into the microphone. Who at this point considers AI a threat to their business? Oh, okay. Who considers an opportunity? Okay, that's
who's saying that because they think their boss might listen to this podcast?
I mean, what's interesting about that was my first real introduction to AI in publishing was the Practical AI report that we did with United Robots. And that was not about, making images of little mice stood on a friggin' bus or whatever. That was all about big data sets being manipulated to provide people with useful information. So local sports scores, property prices, weather. That to me is really interesting.
It's when the search engines come in between that and publishers.
Google's going to make that work for everyone because Google's going to Google, right? They're going to try and
for once, I think you might be more optimistic than
Google. Me. I'm not
you
want to marry Google?
I think on this one I'd trust Google before I'd trust ChatGPT.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen.
That's your Christmas present.
That is the end of Media Voices. Fucking mouse on a bus.
That's the image I could think of.
All right, well, you're still angry, Peter, about who was it that included Rihanna on that cover? Enemy. You're still mad about that. So your headline for your look back, corporate rock sucks.
Yeah. In a way it does. But I have to out myself early on as not a Pitchfork reader. Pitchfork is a generation after me, and it was always too cool for school. But they did what they did really, really well. So my story of the year is how Condé Nast made a really, really stupid decision to fold Pitchfork into GQ.
Why would you say something so controversial yet so brave?
Well, it's not controversial. No one except Condé Nast management thought that was a good idea. I mean, I've got a quote here. I think. Can't tell. For
the audio listeners, Peter has put his peepers on.
So, I'm sure this was Anna Wintour that said this, but both Pitchfork and GQ have unique and valuable ways that they approach music journalism. We're excited for the new possibilities. With these organisational changes, some of our Pitchfork colleagues will be leaving the company. And it's like, these are people that are experts, right? They're experts in the music. So you're going to put them in GQ, which is expert in a whole other bunch of stuff. And you're going to mash them together because you think people are going to move. Well, all you end up with is properly mushy middle. It's like it's the publishing equivalent of putting Rihanna on the cover of NME.
Right.
Where's NME these days?
Just to play devil's avocado, is the issue not that individually some of them were not viable? I don't necessarily believe that. Okay, all right.
If that's the case, then be honest about it. Don't bullshit people and say, "Oh, this fits perfectly with the GQ audience."
I mean, I think it's an interesting point, but I think we're both same kind of vintage, and we remember great fashion in ID and music and art and all that sort of stuff, and then it was the face. So are they not trying to do something kind of similar with the same sort of audience? Maybe not.
Anyone that's interested in Fontaine's DC is definitely not interested in male fashion. You've only got to look at Fontaine's DC, right? Those guys are in their own little planet.
But they kind of are. I mean,
yeah, but
and the challenge is how do you get people into Fontaine's?
So the people that are interested in male fashion, to me, the people that are interested in male fashion, seriously interested in it, not just, I need a new pair of shoes, seriously interested in it, are interested maybe that Fontaine's DC has a new album. So it's an engagement thing, it's a depth of coverage. And they took all that expert. We've just done an interview with Dow Jones.
Yes.
And Dow Jones talked about their vertical strategy, where they were introducing people to other subjects inside a vertical from other verticals in their portfolio. Did I say that right?
Well, yeah, they were talking about providing context. So they have Barron's, which is about investments, and they were feeding those people stuff about energy, for instance, so that they had more of a context.
So to me, what GQ did was they took that expertise. They fired everyone that had it, and they brought in the guy that was writing about shoes the day before to write about Fontaine's DC. That may be an oversimplification, and I apologise to anyone in the GQ staff who has that absolute knowledge of Fontaine's DC. But you get my point. It's weakening the sauce.
Are you ever going to forgive Enemy?
No. I think what's more interesting is that the people who were fired from Pitchfork have gone on to sort their own, I guess you could call it a blog, or an online magazine. It's called Hearing Things. And they're doing exactly what they were doing at Pitchfork, possibly better because they're unfettered by Condé's ownership. But that's not GQ, right? GQ has its own niche. Well, actually, it doesn't have a niche. It has its own waterfront. I think that's very different from what the Face did as an example. My point is, why I think any of this matters is, I think the future is in these niches. If I was American, I would say there's riches in niches. I think that's why it matters, is that publishers need to focus on the niche, not on this broadening out of the message.
I think Barry's back.
Great topic. Different example. New York Times merging with The Athletic, or The Athletic being merged into New York Times. Similarly, not a lot of audience overlap, but apparently it seems to work for them.
Where I do think The Athletic is really, really clever is the niche is super niche.
Yeah.
It's like, the Miami Dolphins or Man United or whatever.
Yeah, they had individual reporters per team. Like a lot of places now, Peter, have specific Taylor Swift reporters as well. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So,
my life.
Well, I think, Esther, it makes more sense for you, after what Peter has said and what I've said, to start the predictions with your bit here, because I think this might be controversial once again.
Okay, so my slightly mad prediction for 2025 is, we've all seen the print revival happening, right? Magazines are upping from 10 issues to 12. They're relaunching. They're doing like special editions. I think the New York Times had a big splash about why the print revival was happening. That's all been confined to magazines so far. I think next year we could see and I'm going to say newsprint revival, not newspaper revival. Newspaper is in a long-term decline. I don't think that's going to reverse. We have to look at things like the Evening Standard dropping its daily edition as a signal of that. But I think if you look at what's happened with magazines over the last 8 to 12 months, I think there's a clear revival there with a different sort of product and intent to what it was a few years ago. But I think with news, we've already touched on this a bit, is that there is a need there still for news. There's a need for quality news. So I think that a weekly news product could be a good counter to the news avoidance issue, something that you can keep up with the news without getting really stressed out about it, and also something that gets you off your phone. Like I'm actually looking at things like The Week and the sort of weekend editions. And I think there's an opportunity for publishers there. The Week and other publishers that do these products need to actually put their print a little bit more prominently, because if you try and subscribe to it, you always get shuttled to the digital pages. So that's my plea. Is I think there's an opportunity there for news magazine type things that just keep you up to date without the daily stress of like what's going on. Oh, and I think we have some.
We certainly do.
Is this
if you could give us
agreement?
a quick intro to who you are, and then we'll go across to Marcel.
My name's Andrew Webb. So Tortoise and the Observer. James Harding with his ideological visions of the wonderful world of news. What do you make of that?
The Guardian, to me, can't be in print forever. And one of the options that The Guardian has, just as some European newspapers and American newspapers have done recently, Hammer the Morgan Post has gone to just a weekend print edition. Well, The Guardian can't go to just a weekend print edition if The Observer's still there. So if they slide The Observer off to Tortoise, then that problem goes away. Also, they've got the operating costs there that they probably rather not have. I don't know. That's my theory on why they want rid of it. Whether they're the right people to buy it, it'd be nice if everyone knew where the money was coming from. That would be a start, right? The transparency that they and I think they do great stuff. They're a great organisation.
Right. Hi, everyone. I'm Asra. I'm editor of journalism.co.uk, co-organizer of News Road Conference. Thank you. I might or might not be sober enough to give you a coherent contribution to this podcast, but don't hold against me on today. It's been a long day. Right. I want to actually follow up on your point, Chris, about Rage Against the Machine and disenfranchised audience as a long-term punk. And I think we as a media have a problem. And the problem is that we tell people what to think, and we don't tell them enough what just to think. And I think people are not stupid, and they are fed up with that, and I get it. And we need to be less raging as the machine and leave that to Rage Against the Machine. And we need to be more of journalists and talk to people, to all the people. I think if we do not optimize for impact, we are not doing our jobs properly. Preaching to the choir is the job of the priests or Rage Against the Machine. And I think we just need to have more respect for audience and cover points of view that might not be our points of view, but they do matter to people that are different from us. And I think for 2025, I would really like to see much more optimization for impact. Because before talking about print and digital and TikTok and revenue and AI, we need to talk about impact. If no one cares about what you guys are doing, it doesn't matter if it's digital or print. It doesn't matter whether it's AI powered or not. It doesn't matter whether you have paywall or not. If people don't give a shit, you're not doing your job properly. And we just need to respect our audience, because we are doing if you just go back to thinking of why you all wanted to become a journalist, and it will be a variation of, I wanted to see the world to be a better place, and just go back to that and just think of how can I make the world to be a better place. Telling people what to think is not the right way to go about it.
I mean, I started because I fancied a woman who worked at the Warrington Guardian, but I take your point. Totally. And I think that to go back to Esther's point about kind of the sprint revival and the new European and membership, almost, you want to feel like you are contributing to something that is making a difference. That's why the New European found its legs in the first couple of days. That's why the New Day, for instance, didn't, because there was no mission.
A throwback.
I know, right?
I also think people are just tired of the phones, they're tired of the algorithm telling them what they're going to read. I think the print thing is, in a way, is that digital disillusionment.
What role do you think the sort of art of layout and design that print still has, that web-based formats have arguably lost, what role do you think that's having in the print revival?
I love you, Adam.
One of the things that, before we get into this, do you remember we went to MagFest?
Yeah.
And I bought a 11 quid single issue of a magazine, and the magazine was just called Dog, and it was pictures of dogs, and I was just like, the smell of it was amazing. Now, they didn't have wet dog smell.
No, we're not. We're discussing this sensibly. We're not going to magazines smell so good.
They just that's part and parcel of it. It's a physical product.
It's not.
No, I actually have a very problem with the whole page sniffer ethos.
Thank you.
You're right. We ran it.
Scratch and sniff, exactly.
For For anyone who doesn't know, I publish with my wife an independent magazine about magazines. You can't flat plan a website. You know, again, roadblocks with the delayed gratification was talking about. You cannot flat plan a website. And one of the things that he said is delayed gratification will never have an app until it's as beautiful as a print. Really nice, enjoyable, impactful graphics that you just do not get on a phone.
Okay, I think that's sentimental bollocks.
It's not.
I think the key thing, and I'm going to pass over to Charlie in a sec, the key thing with print is it's that threshold, is that anybody can make a beautiful website. Canva's got hundreds of templates. You can knock up a lovely Substack within 5 minutes.
Yeah, and then what do? You stick it on this little freaking square, the same as everyone else.
But the threshold for print, and the threshold for making and printing a print magazine is much, much higher, and I think then the trust increases with that. And that's a whole other conversation, but I'd love to hear what Ali has to say on this.
So I'm Ali Warner, and I love magazines. There you go. I used to eventually lecture on them at the University of Roehampton, so I've got skin in the game. I think that layout is really important. It's something that the Week Junior uses a lot for media literacy, and it's something that was really smart. I interviewed Anna Bassi a long time ago, brought her in to talk to my students about it, about how making something a lead story in the Week Junior was something that gave younger readers a sense of the importance of a story. And I think that is something that is a battle for websites that magazines win hands down, and that's something that is really positive about layouts, especially in the news pages of magazines. I really love hearing about the revival of magazines and print because I love them, but I would caveat that with saying that I think that there are a lot of younger readers who are the next generation that you want to attract that still find them quite difficult to they'll like to have them on their coffee table, but they're not necessarily going to read the content. So there's work to be done there.
Although, interestingly, the Week Junior team will also say part of their success at the moment is because parents are looking for something to give them that isn't a screen.
Yeah.
And I wonder if grown-ups need the same kind of parenting.
As the final prediction, Peter, for years and years and years, you have said Mix of Six, I think because you like the sound of it more than anything else. But you have titled this one, Mix of Six, Were We Wrong? So what is happening with revenue diversification?
Well, I think everyone would agree that revenue diversification is a good thing. I saw a comment from Louise White, who we used to work with at Media Break. She was at this PPA conference, and she said, the obsession with diversifying revenues is dangerous. That's a bigger media play. Most independents don't have the expertise or bandwidth, and it leads to mediocrity at many rather than excellence in few.
So, no. And I shook my hand. I said no. And I think we as journalists... Is there anyone who had any other career before became journalists? By show of hands. One. Pizza boy. That's 2. 3. Right. This is the dangerous thing. I don't think there has ever been anything like the gold age of news when everyone just wanted news, trusted news, and everything was news. I think people always bought papers for crosswords, horoscopes, classified ads, and they got news on the site. And nothing has changed. Only now we have data to see that.
Well, exactly. Yeah. I love that.
and it's so hard. I mean, it hurts as editors to think, oh my God, people don't care primarily about news unless they are news junkies, which is fine. But I think the whole point of diversifying revenue is to respond to just natural audience behavior of getting news on the site of other things. And I've seen fantastic examples in the industry where, say, subscriptions have provided other perks, games, recipes, tools, reviews, whatever matter to you, parenting advice, whatever, where you can see the value, and then you got the news on the site, and it's fine. And this is the message I really want. Getting news on the site is fine. If people don't want to buy news, that's okay, as long as you satisfy a need and also inform them about the stuff. And I think trying to stuff the news down the throats of audiences, we are just digging our own grave. And then we go to Newsrewired or other conference, and then we bitch about audiences not caring enough about us. And you know what? Fair enough. You know, people, you know, they are grown-ups. It's their job to decide what's important for them, and it's our job to work out how to get it to them. And this is why tech companies do really good products, because they keep track of that. And that's why, by and large, publishers are not doing a very good job, because they do not care what audiences want. And I think we should. And, you know, impact is the most important metrics we should optimize for.
I think there's an awful lot to be said, right? Like there's a lot of vanity in news publishing, 100%. And Peter, I think you were talking less about almost the support via kind of revenue models like games. MIT obviously does that. They're the poster child for this.
So what she's talking about is people doubling down on reader revenue and ignoring their ad revenue, or going into niches that they weren't necessarily in before, or just doing stuff just for the sake of doing something different. And the FT strategy has actually nailed this one for me. Because basically their point was, it's exactly what Marcel actually said, you've got to know what your audience wants, right? But it's about doing diversification strategically rather than the way some publications did, oh, we've got to have a reader revenue stream, or we've got to have an event stream, or whatever. Hearst's interesting on this one. Axios was reporting. So Hearst, a 140-year-old company, the revenues is $12 billion. For the first time in those 140 years, this year, 50% of their revenue didn't come from newspapers or magazines. And that's kind of interesting.
I have a new catchphrase for you. The key is 3.
I like that, yeah.
Well, that was someone did a survey that was focused on 3. Is that FT again? It's the same thing.
Yeah, although they considered 3 or 4 streams diversified.
But that's all originally started with David Carey, who was at that time the chairman for Hearst. And he said that I'm publishing 6 revenue streams. 6 is probably too many. But maybe not. Maybe if you're Hearst, 6 isn't too many.
But I mean, that's always come down. It's always been a sort of like, okay, well, we can't rely solely on reader revenue or advertising. It has to be, you know, something else that is growing. It's about, if you think about where people are looking for, you know, how they value media businesses, it's in part where they are seeing growth. So I wonder to what extent that is not just a sort of like for stability, but for future growth kind of conversation. You know, people.
I think that's why you've seen people doubling down on events or online training or CPD type training, you know, whatever it is that sits with the audience. Oof.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's so. What is your prediction then for next year? Are we going to see a retrenchment?
I think people will maybe stop talking about reader revenue and not because they're not doing it, but because it's become maybe just part of their business, and it's not this, oh, we've got to do new stuff, we've got to do all this new stuff. I think it will be that kind of consolidation. Talking to Telegraph guys, and the newsletter team at the Telegraph, and it's about that consolidation, and I think that's interesting.
So it's not what's the next big thing, it's let's focus on doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Sorry, I just feel like we've had this conversation 5 years ago. We're just now doing like endless circles around it.
All these conversations 5 years ago, that's why media is so frustrating. It's like the industry that will not learn.
Thank you so much for coming to this episode of Media Voice, everybody. That is coming up on an hour. You will hear the magic of the edit when this episode goes out.
Doesn't time fly when you're having fun?
We do have more stuff to come. We are diversifying. We have the thing of 3. What was it?
Strategically.
Yeah. What was it?
The key is 3.
The key is 3. We have our own events.
We have more than 3.
We do. Sorry. Coming up in December, on the 4th, we have an interrogating newsletter analytics masterclass with the FT's US newsletter editor, Emily Goldberg. Now you can book that by going to voices.media/masterclasses. And we will also be announcing our 2025 publisher masterclasses very soon.
Won't we, Chris?
We certainly will. I will do that.
Once we have some masters to hold.
Do not worry. That's going to get edited out.
And related, if you have anything...
No, sorry, I need a clean take.
No, you don't, we're fine. related, if you have anything to do with podcasts, newsletters, apps, or print, yeah, we're not sticking to 3 things, are we? Can you please get June the 10th and June the 11th, 2025 in your diary, as we're running 4 summits and 2 awards across 2 days. We're adding apps and print to our already established publisher, podcast, and newsletter summits. So if you have any case studies and you're in the room or you're listening and you want to share sessions to propose or anything else, any other thoughts to share as we plan, including you can write to us saying we're mental, please go to voices.media/summit and there's a nice Google form to fill in. And I'd love to hear from you.
So this is our last episode in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Taking a break.
But the publisher newsletter, which if you've not already signed up for, why?
Should we just not let people out of the room until it's like
we'll be doing
hostage-based publishing. I like it as I did.
Proof of life, if you say that. We'll be doing the newsletter.
Do you think that that's the only thing keeping the newspaper industry alive is the hostages having to hold up today's newspaper? So they require people to buy it.
The proof of life business model. And that's it. That's basically it. It's amazing to be here in this room, which is just quite a small room, quite a lot of people.
And
We've got
food.
Sponsors.
Yeah.
We've got former guests. We've got avid listeners. We've got award winners. And some people I don't know who are. We love the fact that you came, so thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you to all of you. That's been fantastic. Back in the new year with another round of all the news and the views from the media world.
No, we won't. Do you want to retake
that? From the people. We'll be back
That's not what we do anymore.
We'll be back examining the people and products powering publishing in the new year.
Yes.
Yeah. But for now, thank you so much for listening and goodbye.
And happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas.